What's going on, everybody? Today I will be previewing Washington State's schedule, and I will be predicting every game on their schedule. I will break down their schedule and predict which games I think they will win, and I will also predict which games I think they will lose. Similar to Oregon State, Washington State will be one of the only two teams left in the Pac-12, which will now basically be considered the Pac-2, and it won't really even be considered a conference. So because they don't have a conference, they have a deal going with the Mountain West, so their schedule will be a majority of Mountain West competition. So they should win a lot more games because of the easy competition. But before I get into talking about their schedule, be sure to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel because we upload daily college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing and also consider joining my Discord server down in the description below. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Washington State lost a lot of talent going into next season. They lost their very talented quarterback Cam Ward, and they also lost their two best receivers, Josh Kelly and Lincoln Victor. I'm pretty sure that they will be returning Kyle Williams at receiver, so he should play a huge factor to this team. And they also brought in a couple receivers from the transfer portal, most notably Chris Hudson from Oregon. They are losing a lot of guys on offense and defense, but they also brought in Keith Brown from Louisville, who is a highly rated 4-star linebacker, who will probably be one of the best players on that defense. Washington State is a team that could be a bit underrated heading into next season. They had a lot of talent on the team last year. Even despite going 5-7, they were just way too inconsistent, and the offensive line wasn't great, and the defense was pretty average. I'm not sure who will start a quarterback next season for Washington State, but they could be decent at quarterback again. Either the transfer quarterback from the Bryant Bulldogs will fill that role, or we will see John Mateer, who was the backup quarterback last season, and he had really solid stats for the little time he played as a freshman, and he could be good, and he will be a sophomore next season. There's a lot of holes on this team, but I still think the offense will have talent, and the defense could possibly be better with some of the additions that they made in the transfer portal. I truly don't know what to expect from this team, but they lost a lot of talent, and I guess we'll learn more about this team as time goes by. But let's get into predicting these games the best I can. And their first game of the season is a home game against Portland State. Washington State will have a pretty new look team next year, so this should be a warm-up game for Washington State, and they should definitely win this game unless something crazy happens. But 99.9% of the time an FBS team plays an FCS team, the FBS team will win, and I definitely think Washington State wins this game at home, and I have them moving to 1-0 to start the season. Their next game is at home against Texas Tech. This should definitely be a very interesting game, and Texas Tech is a team with a lot of potential to be better. They brought in the best recruiting class in the Big 12, and it wasn't even close. And they also brought in a 5-star receiver from their recruiting class, Micah Hudson, who could see the field right away. But what makes this game even more interesting is that former Washington receiver Josh Kelly transferred to Texas Tech. So this Texas Tech offense could be one of the Big 12's best. They brought a lot of talent in from the transfer portal and their recruiting class. I'm a little unsure about the quarterback position for Texas Tech, and I don't know if the defense will be great, but I think Texas Tech will have a lot more overall talent than Washington State will have. And I definitely have Texas Tech winning a tough road game against Washington State. So I do have Washington State moving to 1-1 on the season. Washington State's next game on the season will be the Apple Cup game against Washington. I'm pretty sure this is a neutral site game and it will be played in Seattle, Washington. This is a game that could possibly be a win for Washington State because of how much Washington lost. Washington lost every single offensive starter from the national championship game on their team, and they also lost their head coach. And there's no way Washington will be nearly as good as they were this past season, but I still think Washington will be a decent team. They brought in some solid pieces from the transfer portal, including new quarterback Will Rogers, and they should be able to beat Washington State. And I do have Washington winning a close game. So I have Washington State moving to 1-2 on the season after a heartbreaking loss in the Apple Cup. But this could be a potential win for Washington State. I don't know how much Washington will actually fall off. I don't know how much any of these two teams will actually fall off. But I don't see Washington or Washington State being great next season, but they could be decent. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Washington State's next home game will be a home game against San Jose State. San Jose State could possibly be decent next season. They had a good offense last season, but they were just way too inconsistent, and I don't expect anything crazy from San Jose State in 2024. This should be a game that Washington State definitely wins. The competition in the Mountain West won't be very tough for Washington State, and I think this is a game Washington State should definitely realistically win, so I have them winning this game and moving to 2-2 on the season. Washington State's next game on the schedule is a road game against Oregon State, and this game will actually be played nearing the end of November. It will be a game at the end of the season, and the 7 games after this game don't have dates announced yet, so the schedule is kind of all over the place, but Washington State will play Oregon State on November 23rd, and I think these teams should be pretty evenly matched. They did both lose a lot of talent, but they are still levels above the majority of the teams in the Mountain West. But it's very hard to beat Oregon State in their home stadium, and Oregon State does have this game at home. So I do have to go with Oregon State winning this game, and I have Washington State losing another game, and I have Washington State moving to 2-3 on the season. Washington's next game will be on the road against San Diego State. This could be a difficult game for Washington State. San Diego State is usually a solid team, and the fact that San Diego State has this game at home could make it a bit difficult for Washington State. But let's be real, San Diego State had an atrocious offense this past season, and they weren't good in 2023. So I think it's safe to say Washington State should definitely win this game, unless San Diego State gets a lot better. But they lost a lot of guys in the transfer portal, and their offense is in complete shambles. So I have Washington State winning this game and moving to 3-3 at the halfway point on the season. Washington State's next game will be on the road against Boise State. And I could talk all the crap about how bad most of these Group of 5 teams are, but I think Boise State will actually be the best team out of the Group of 5. And I think Boise State isn't a bad team, so I think this will be a very difficult game for Washington State. Now don't get me wrong, this is definitely a winnable game for Washington State, but Boise State does have this game at home, and I expect Malachi Nelson and that Boise State defense just to be too much for Washington State. So I have Washington State losing another game on their schedule, and I had them moving to 3-4 on the season. I'm just really high on this Boise State team, and it's nothing against Washington State, but Washington State lost a lot of talent, and they should struggle next season against the good teams they play, and Boise State's on the rise. The next game on Washington State's schedule will be another tough road game, and they play Fresno State on the road. And I think this is a 50-50 game, to be honest. Fresno State is always a solid Group of 5 team, and they did beat Arizona State pretty easily last season, and they've won against Pac-12 teams in the past. And I do hate to have Washington State lose another game, but I think because of the home field advantage factor, Fresno State wins a very close game. Like this could be a last-second field goal type of game. Fresno State has some decent talent returning next season, and I do have Washington State losing this game to move to 3-5 on the season. But don't worry, because their next 4 games are very easy games, and maybe there's a high possibility they don't lose any more games on that schedule. I guess you'll have to tune in for the rest of the video. But their next game will be their last game on the road, and it will be against a pretty bad New Mexico team. I think Washington State will win this game pretty easily. New Mexico is just a terrible team. They did manage to beat Fresno State last season, and I don't know how that happened, but they still went 4-8, and they are just a bad team. And again, unless something crazy happens, there's no way Washington State loses this game. So I have Washington State winning their last away game and moving to 4-5 on the season. Washington State's next game will be a home game against Hawaii. Hawaii is a team that is usually a pretty bad team. They lost to Stanford by 2 possessions last season, and Washington State should be a lot better than that Stanford team ever was. And I think Washington State wins this game pretty easily. And I definitely don't see them dropping this game at home. Maybe something crazy could happen if Hawaii had this game at home, but Washington State should definitely win this game. So I have Washington State winning this game and moving to 5-5 on the season, getting them one step closer to a bowl game they missed out on in 2023. Washington State's next game will be at home against Utah State. Utah State actually went 6-7 the past 2 seasons. They had the same record, and they are the most average team you can think of. They are kind of the middle team of the Mountain West, but like I said, I think Washington State is better than most of the teams in the Mountain West, and I think Washington State should definitely beat Utah State at home. The last time these 2 teams played was actually back in 2021, when Utah State had a pretty good team, and they went 11-3 that year, and Utah State actually beat Washington State 26-23, but I think Washington State gets their revenge, and I have Washington State winning this game at home and moving to 6-5 on the season, becoming bowl eligible. The last game on Washington State's schedule is a home game against Wyoming, and Wyoming was actually a very solid team in 2023, believe it or not, and they went undefeated in their home games, and they had a very solid defense. And they honestly weren't talked about enough. And maybe I would consider picking Wyoming if they had this game at home, but this will be a tougher game for Wyoming on the road, and they don't play great in road games. And I don't think Wyoming will be as good as they were this past season. They did pretty bad in recruiting, and they did pretty bad in the transfer portal, and they lost a lot of talent on the team. So I think Washington State wins this game, and I have Washington State winning this game and finishing the season with a 7-5 record, and I have them making a bowl game. I don't necessarily think Washington State will have a better team, but I think the easier competition leads them to a better record than 5-7. Last season they went 5-7, and they barely missed out on a bowl game. And they had their ups and downs last season, but I thought this Washington State team had a lot of talent in 2023, but they just had a collapse after starting 4-0. So I don't know what happened, but 2024 will be a refresh for them, and they could be a decent team that possibly shocks some people. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. But if I'm predicting their schedule right now, I think 7-5 is a realistic prediction for Washington State football in 2024. But you guys let me know down in the comments below what you think their record will be next season. But anyways, that's going to do it for the video. Be sure to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel because we upload daily college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing and also consider joining my Discord server down in the description below. But that's going to do it, guys, and peace out.